All investing, as I think Buffett says, is value investing. So, what is value investing? You're putting out a rupee today in the hope that after a period of time, adjusted for inflation and taxes, that it will be worth more than what you put out today. So you're really trying to enhance the purchasing power of what you have. And that is, you can have different things that create that value. So in many cases, it's growth and sustained growth, which is profitable and therefore leads to the business being worth a whole lot more. And so people don't see that conventionally as value investing, but it is. And the best exponent of that is Buffett. So I don't know, as he says, he's 85% Fisher, 15% Graham. And in the end, everyone says he's a value investor. So clearly, you know, that's one form. And then you have guys like Seth Klarman. And Seth Klarman has been known to hold as much as 40% cash in his portfolio when he doesn't find investment opportunities that he believes are priced attractively. And he has an outstanding track record as well over a very long period of time. But for him, it's getting it right both in terms of the business that he owns and the price that he pays for it. So that's another kind of value. A third kind is the old-fashioned kind, which really I started out with, which is the Benjamin Graham kind.
Right.
Where you buy businesses where you think that even in, you know, circumstances that are adverse, that you will not lose a large amount of money, and you buy them cheap, and you diversify across a wide spectrum of such businesses, and hopefully that works. So
safety first there.
Yeah, it's called, I think now the sort of unfashionable name for this one is cigar butt investing. But it's not bad. I mean, clearly you can't do it, as Buffett keeps on pointing out in his annual reports, if you have very large sums of money. But what are very large sums? Are we as individuals, how many of us have that constraint? How many of us have such huge sums of money that we can't apply that method to good effect? Certainly I'm not in that happy situation. So I'm very much, I remain, you know, that there are elements of cigar butt that I think that are useful. And as a intellectual construct, I think it's worth keeping in mind. Because to me, value investing is actually 85% psychology. It's not as much economics, accounting, you know, balance sheet analysis as people make it out to be. And the three things that really matter in value investing, which I think are very, very important and determine how you should behave in the pursuit of value. One is what you pay to own a particular company or a business. Second is your time horizon.
Okay.
And the third is how much money you're willing to lose.
Right.
So, and these can differ for different individuals. They're not the same for everyone. Yeah? So, obviously they shape what your return expectation should be.
Sure.
And while I might have a return expectation which says that, you know, if I can earn over long periods of time between 15 and 18% inclusive of dividends, I'm doing very well. That may be completely inappropriate for another person who has a different set of return expectations. And I think, therefore, the manner in which you invest and seek value is a function of these three things, and is completely idiosyncratic.
Different for different people.
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot spell out a one-size-fits-all approach to value investing.
How do you do it? I mean, just deconstruct it for our viewers.
So I think, so if you go back to basics and, you know, think about what it is to be a good businessman. Because Buffett says, the better I get as a businessman, the better I become as an investor. So let's think about how you can do this. One is, as an investor, what are you doing? You're buying a part of a business. Right? And so obviously the important thing, you could either own 1/1,000,000th of 1% of a business or 100% of the business, where you own the entire business. But the important thing is that what is going to determine your future is the quality of the business that you own.
Right.
That's crucial. It doesn't matter how much you own.
Right.
Okay? So the first thing to do is to think about what kind of business do I want to own? And I think 3 or 4 things stand out here, which help you to maximize the chances in your favor.
Right.
So one is, make sure that whatever business you own can use the money that it has available to it in a way that is productive, that earns a fairly high level of return consistently over a period of time.
Okay.
And how do you do that? It's easier said than done. So you do that because your business has a set of advantages which are understood by the customers of your business, which other people don't. And I think the fancy word for this is moat. But it doesn't have, you don't have to use that word moat, and you could do perfectly well. So what you've got to do is either, as Michael Porter said, you can be the low cost producer.
Okay.
So you have a cost advantage. Sure. You do things, that other people do, but you do it at a much lower cost. Therefore, you compete much better. And you can do this over a long period of time. It's sustainable. It's not that it will get eroded and vanish pretty quickly. So let me give you an example of a company which is predicated on this one idea. Okay. It's a central focus of this company.
Which is a low-cost producer. I mean,
that is the story of its success. And it's done this consistently for the last 10 years. And I suspect will continue to do it for the next 10 years.
Okay.
And I'm not making forecasts about how well the stock will do.
Absolutely.
So just but I'm using this as an illustration of something that is sustainable over the long haul. Many people say that, the low-cost producer is vulnerable because someone else will come in and erode that cost advantage. And here is an illustration of a guy where they haven't been able to do. And he competes globally. In fact, he doesn't compete in India.
Right.
It's a company called Balkrishna Industries.
Okay.
Which sells off-highway tires and off-the-road tires. And what is his cost advantage? That he manufactures in India and sells in Europe. And he has a huge cost advantage in terms of employee costs. Employee costs are a significant proportion of the total cost of manufacturing, and his marketing and selling expenses are also lower.
Okay.
And on that basis, if you use this advantage that he had, he prices far more aggressively, and because his pricing is more aggressive, he has achieved in excess of 9% global market share for farm tires.
Wow.
And he competes with Michelin, he competes with Trelleborg, he competes with Bridgestone. So it's not as if he's competing with the minnows, right? And so that's the power of low cost.
Okay.
Second is that you have a product which is, in the view of the user who consumes or buys that product, something that gives you better value and is different, and you cannot get that from other competitors at the same price point that this company can offer.
Okay.
So it's what you call differentiation.
Okay.
You have an advantage wherein you sell something, it may be, in fact, actually the absolute price of what you sell per unit may be higher, but because the consumer derives that much more incremental benefit by consuming.
Real or perceived?
Real or perceived. Absolutely right. Cigarettes is a phenomenal example of the perceived difference, or the cosmetics industries, perfume, scents. Sure. Yeah, is another illustration of that. But yes, but the thing is, in the mind of the consumer, he must be willing to pay more to buy your product because it is for him a product that has a positive differentiation and is superior to other products available in that same category.
Sure.
Okay? So now, simple one, and again a company that has done this for years, and I suspect will continue doing it. And this is very much up the Buffett street. Nestle.
Nestle.
Yeah? So, Maggi noodles, you could argue, I mean, you look at all the Nestle product categories, Cerelac, coffee, millions of other people are in these categories.
Absolutely.
But in the mind of the mother, buying a product for her child,
nothing comes close.
That's right. And so she's willing to pay much money. And this is pricing power. And this, over time, can also give you a huge advantage.
Okay.
ITC in cigarettes.
Right.
Of course, there's much more to ITC in cigarettes than just this. I mean, there's a huge number of other elements which make ITC the powerhouse that it is in cigarettes. But that's one. And the third is that you have a proprietary advantage, which is either conferred by government fiat by technology, by design, by a number of things. It's a proprietary advantage.
Okay.
So let me give an illustration of this, of a company which now, where the advantage has actually diminished significantly over time, but it takes me back to a happy moment in HDFC when I first started out. It was one of the first stocks I bought when I started out in HDFC. And it was actually virtually unknown at the time. Now it's a household name. It's a company called Container Corporation of India.
Okay.
So Container Corporation of India is actually a spin-off of the Indian Railways. And so they used to get access to wagons on a preferential basis compared to anyone else. And if you're in the freight handling and moving business, access to wagons is absolutely critical.
Yes.
And no one can touch you.
Yes.
Right? And so Container Corporation emerged as one of the biggest beneficiaries of India's growing trade, both exports and imports. And it did phenomenally because no one else could get rakes,
right,
could get wagons from Indian Railways at that time. And then, of course, as we know, people came in, they set up the infrastructure. So now you have Gateway District Parks, you have All Cargo, you have a bunch of other companies.
Sure.
But it took a long time. And in that period, if you are invested in Container Corporation, let's say from the year 2000 till the year 2010, it would have been exceptionally rewarding.
Okay.
So now you look at these three elements and you look for basically variants of this.
So the first is
the low cost producer.
Right. Differentiated product.
Differentiated product or proprietary advantage.
Okay.
It's Michael Porter. There's nothing here that I'm saying. I mean, I'm sorry to sound so trite, but this is straight out of the classroom.
Sure.
Yeah. Now you apply these three in the context of analyzing how a company does business. And then say, you know, what does this company have to do when it deals with a number of audiences to come out right? So you look at customers and how customers benefit from this.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, that's why you're in business.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, your customers allow you to be in business. But you also got to consider a bunch of other things which are very, very important. So you can have advantages in that regard. Like for instance, in the cement industry, access to raw materials.
Sure. Sure.
Or you can have, for instance, in businesses that are highly regulated, you can have, you know, a longer license period.
Sure.
So you can have integrated suppliers. The Japanese made a great virtue of this when they went out, the Japanese auto industry, because they went, wherever they went, they took their suppliers with them.
Sure.
And so their cost of production was greatly influenced by having their own suppliers.
Yes.
So your suppliers matter. And I think in services, which is now a business where a huge amount of wealth has been created in our country, particularly in IT services. And sadly, I think now, in fact, the wheel seems to have come full circle because people don't realize this. The employees, the people that you have, they determine the quality of the service that you can deliver.
Sure.
So I was privileged to work for a company called CRISIL. And I'd venture to say this, when CRISIL started, not me, leaving me aside, but the other people there were absolutely wonderful in terms of their level of motivation, in terms of their desire to, you know, really push themselves hard,
right,
you know, in terms of the effort that they put in. And that is the reason why I think to some extent that CRISIL actually grew as well as it did.
But why do you say for IT it's come full circle?
Because I think now people have become much more, you know, the way they treat employees is more as numbers.
Right.
They don't realize that there's a huge challenge in having 400,000 employees. And that is the biggest single way forward in terms of achieving growth.